Where were you born?
I was born in Oakley, Idaho.
How long ago? When? Tell us about your house.
Hospital, in a house.
Heck,
Elaborate.
I'm sure I was born at home. And probably one of my mother's sisters, an aunt of mine, would have been the attending midwife or whatever. And that was 89 years ago.
What pet?
What?
Just about anything that wandered into the yard became a pet. And we had cats in the trees, and we had dogs, and
Riley. Remember Riley dog?
I remember Riley dog, and the first dog I really remembered was Old Luke.
Old Duke.
Old Luke, and he belonged to me and my brother, and he died.
Did anyone in your family serve
My
in the
father
war?
served in World War I, and my brother, Bob, and my husband served in World War II. Both of them served in the Air Force. And lots of others, but I don't remember.
All right.
When you went to the...
We didn't have primary on Sunday when I was a girl. We went to primary after school, and we would walk from the school that we went to over to the church and have our primary in the middle of the week. I don't really remember teachers so much, but I do know that my mother was the pianist and the chorister and anything else, and that I never went to primary without my mother being there. I do remember one time when I was not very old, and my brother and Mother wanted us to sing Love at Home, and in primary, and so we stood up there because she was twisting, she was making sure, because we did not want to sing, neither one of us were very brave, and we just couldn't sing Love at Home without giggling a little. And so my mother, she took each one of us by the ear or the back of the neck or somewhere, took us off into a little classroom in there, and she told us we were going to sing Love at Home. And we did.
You made it through.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Yes, I grew up on a farm, and we had cows and pigs and everything else, and we worked in the fields and thinned the beets and all of that kind of stuff. And what was the rest of the question?
Do you like gardens?
Did you have a garden?
Did you like gardens?
Always had a garden, a big garden, to be weeded constantly.
And what did you do with all the stuff from the garden?
And all the stuff from the garden was picked and carried to the house and was canned and canned and canned. And that we ate it all winter long. We would go to a farmer down about 50 miles from where we lived, and we would pick bushels and bushels of peaches, and we would go home and we would bottle, put them into good old curd jars and and that was dessert to the winter time. Did I like the garden? I liked what came out of the garden. I didn't like the worms, and I didn't like the little snakes that came visiting occasionally, but that was one of our jobs through the summer when we were out of school, was to weed the garden alongside my mother. And we would have fun, and we'd sing, and she loved to sing, and she was very musical. So it wasn't all work. We had fun. And we had food.
Okay, go.
Do you have any family members that walked the plane?
Yes, we had a lot of relatives who came across the plains and that were familiar with Joe's, with the Smith family and all of them. But I don't know their names. But they helped settle the little villages up around where I was born and grew up. But I can't give you their names or anything.
How are they related to you?
They're my mother and father.
like your parents' parents, or like your parents' parents' parents, or
yeah, something like that.
What were your hobbies growing up?
Say it one more time. Go ahead.
We didn't really hardly have time for hobbies because we were working, and so I was learning to cook. I went to work for a neighbor woman when I was maybe 12, 13, and they lived on a fairly good-sized farm, and so they had a lot of hired men that helped with work on the farm because you didn't have tractors and you didn't have all of that kind of stuff. And so, and they lived in like a bunkhouse with that, and so this lady, the lady of the farm, she fed them, and so I learned how to make pies, I learned how to make cakes, I learned how to make coffee, but I never tasted it. So I have no idea.
Didn't know if you made it good or not?
I don't know what those old hired men were drinking, but they just kicked up their teething, and I just kept making the coffee. So I didn't learn to crochet until after I was married and had Led. And my husband, the sweet Frankie, used to say, "Why don't you do this like your mother? Why don't you crochet like your mother?" And so finally I just decided I would learn to crochet. My mother had tried to teach me and I couldn't catch it, so I started out, found me a doily pattern of a pineapple about like that, and I worked on that thing while my husband was working, and then I'd hide it, and I didn't let anybody see it until I had finished it by reading directions from a book, and my mother and my mother-in-law both crocheted, but neither one of them read directions. And here I had this nice, beautiful doily. When I displayed it, I was very proud. And I probably...
We're so glad you learned.
If you look around in my kids' homes, they all have
Lots of them.
lots of doilies and lots of afghans and all of that stuff. So I don't have any music in my fingers or in my head or anything Oh, in my head, yeah, I got lots of music there.
Go ahead.
Why did you choose
Okay.
Okay. We went to school together. I got into his math classes, wrote his essays, and what else was there? We got married.
Did you date in high school then?
Oh yeah.
You dated all the way through high school?
Oh yeah. Not exclusively, because we didn't do that in those days. And we always went in a group, and in one car we'd pile as many as we could. And my brother and I were in the same group of friends and that, so wherever I went or he went, I went. So I always had a built-in chaperone and a very good friend. And
Your what brother?
my brother's just older than me,
And his name was?
Bob.
Bob.
And so, and he and Frank were really good friends, and so it was just, we just always knew we were going to get married, and that was what. I didn't go with him or see him or anything for a year before we were married, because it was during, war had been declared, and so he was in California. He graduated a year ahead of me, and he wanted me to forget about finishing school and just flip right up to the courthouse and get married and go to California to see him. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That isn't in my plan. So I just said goodbye. He went back to California, and I went to school and graduated. And about a week after I helped get the beets thinned and on the farm, there was Frank on my doorstep, and a week later we were married.
In the courthouse, swept up?
No, he had to be ordained an elder. He was 19, and then my mother and Frank and I went to Logan, and we married in Temple.
What was the date? When were you guys married?
July the 7th, 1942. Quite a lot of years.
And did you wear your wedding dress to your wedding?
No, I did not.
You want to tell us why?
I sort of left it hanging in the motel room because we were already quite late, because we hadn't got there to Logan early enough to get our license and that, so there was just different things to do.
But you never wore a wedding dress?
I never wore my wedding dress. It was when my aunt had made it for me. Those were nearly elaborate as they are nowadays. The thing was, it was white, and it was pure, and so was I, and that's what mattered. And we had a lot of good years, and got a lot of good kids, and had a lot of fun.
Okay.
Now.
Yep, now.
We didn't do much vacationing when I was growing up, because we always had chores to do at home. There were the cows to milk and the pigs to swat and all of that kind of stuff, and the fields to be hoed. We used to go up to a lake that was probably about 25 miles or something.
Lake Cleveland?
And we used to go up there. That's where we learned to fish, and we would go up there with we didn't have sleeping bags, but we would take bedding, and we didn't have a tent, so we'd sleep out under the stars and just make big beds out of our quilts and blankets and lay and watch the stars and sing. My mom and dad would lay in bed and sing love songs, and those are the favorite. vacations that I remember.
Tell us about your best friend growing up.
Probably my very best friend would be my brother Bob. We were only like about 14 months apart. And he was kind of little and scrawny, and I was both, you know. And the boys really liked to have me on their football team and stuff because I was really mean. I had a friend. We were friends forever in school. Her name was Mary Lou. Her hair was red, face was freckled. Nice little mister. And I had lots of friends, but we had a lot of friends because we didn't have all of the things to do that kids have now, and so it was kind of a neighborhood grouping. I mean, the kids in my ward were friends with kids in my ward, and they had competition with ball games and stuff like that, and we didn't go very far from home. They were just that, but I would have to say that probably my brother Bob was my best friend. No.
What was one of your memories of Trish?
She was my little cheerleader. And
Julie played the piano, practiced piano for her.
That's something that she did. They wanted to take piano lessons, and I really wanted them to learn to play the piano because I didn't have a musical bone in my body, and my mother did, but it was all by ear. She never had any, so she was no good at teaching. So they got signed up for piano lessons, and they'd come home from school. Was it before school or after? After. Come home from school. After snacks, and because we always had cookies. You know, we had cookies all the time.
About piano practicing.
Oh, yeah. And everything just seemed all right. One of them was to do a half an hour, and then the other one half an hour of practicing, and I thought they were doing stupid. And to find out years later, she'd been paying Julie off to do her practicing. So Julie was getting an hour and night practicing, and Tricia was on the telephone. I imagine I can't know where else she had done. True.
Okay, go ahead.
I got a permanent today.
That was your favorite. And now they say I'm beautiful.
You were beautiful before.
No, you didn't see me.
Way better than yesterday, though.
You know, the memory that stays in my mind when I think about that is that when I was young, and I'm talking about like 5 or 6, somewhere around in there, life was different at parts of it, but in the fall, when it was just beautiful and it was getting dark and that, the neighbors in our neighborhood were in this little town up, I don't know, it wasn't a town up where I was born. The parents and the kids we would gather as soon as it started getting dark, and we'd play run, sheep, run. It's like hide and seek, kind of. And it was dark, and we would, our parents would be with us, and we could hear them off giggling, or we could hear, and it was just fun, but it was kind of scary. But we used to do that an awful lot with us. And with the whole families, people that we didn't hardly ever see, but they would come out and we'd play with them. And I like that I've never forgotten. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right. Well, there are two of them, but they're kind of interrelated. I remember one day my brother and I were outside playing, and my aunt came to the door and took us inside and said, get your pajamas and that, and you can go up to Aunt Gwen's.
Where's Bubba?
So she fixed us a little, in a pillowcase or something, a little bag of things, and told us to go up to Aunt Gwen's, and that we could stay all night. So he put us on a old nag, and we rode up to Aunt Gwen's. And when we went home the next day, my dad was all decked out in his suit and with his hair, and I had a little baby brother. And he became he was mine. I was about 10 years old. Not quite. But I carried that. I carried him up. And I just almost hated my mother when she let anybody take my baby. And then a few years later, living in a different house, and we'd been outside playing. It was in December, and we were just having a great day. We were in school, as I remember, but went upstairs, and there was my aunt holding another little baby sister, and I don't care whether I had my little baby always cute.
So do you want to tell them on this recording that after these events being the best memories, that when you got married and had a baby, you didn't know how babies were going to be born?
That's the truth, and I didn't know where they came from or how they got where. So when I went to California,
Things were different then.
So when I went to California with Frank after we were married, and we'd been down there about 3 months, and I was not going to have a baby. So I went to work out at the airplane factory and riveted the airplanes together. And sometime later, I had a baby. But I didn't know it. Now, the lady I used to work for, she said to me one day, "Have you been to the doctor lately?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I think you ought to go." So I did. And
Yeah, that farm life did a lot for her. Oh, she's a slow learner.
oh, I was, but oh, I loved them when they came.